Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jade Stanton, and I have borderline personality disorder. So I'm just gonna throw it right out there for everybody. And today I thought that I would tell everyone my story. So I'll start at the beginning. I was an emotionally sensitive child. I knew that I was a little bit different, and I think a lot of us with BPD, we know early on that we have something just a little bit different. We're picking up on things that other people aren't picking up on. And that was true for me. I knew that I was a little bit different, but I really didn't have an inkling of what it was. I was very imaginative. I could imagine myself being a character in a book or a movie, and I would try to recreate that character in my persona, and I would practice speaking in different ways or acting in different ways. And I thought that that was just normal imaginative play, but I found out later that that was probably part of my BPD and self-identity issues starting to show really, really early on. So by the time that I started to hit puberty, that's when I first started to see some symptoms coming up, and it started with severe depression. I was a dancer. I loved to do ballet and tap and jazz. I no longer wanted to go to my dance classes. I didn't want to see my friends. I didn't want to go out anymore. And my mother had come to me and said, hey, I think this is depression, because she was familiar with it. And I finally had a word for what I was experiencing. And I remember that day very clearly when she told me that, because that was the first time that I knew there was something going on with my brain. There was something going on with my brain or my body that was different. And so shortly after that, I started to have a lot of emotional instability coming up. I started to get angry. I was normally a very obedient child. I was a pretty quiet child, and did well in school, all of those things. But once I started to get around 14, 15, I started to get really angry, and they probably thought, this is puberty. But again, very quickly we realized this is not normal puberty. Before long, I was having major angry outbursts. I was acting in ways that I didn't recognize in my own self, and I started to self-injure. I started to self-harm. And so that was very alarming to my family. And so they immediately started getting me into treatment. I started to see a therapist. I started to go to a psychiatrist and did a psychological evaluation. And they came back with a long list of disorders, including borderline personality disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, among other things. And I was 16 at the time, and it was unusual to have a BPD diagnosis that early on. But I was so symptomatic that they seemed to not have much doubt that BPD was what I had. But that did not help me with resources. We had a major issue finding treatment. We went through therapist after therapist after therapist. I was on different medications. Nothing seemed to help. Eventually, I did go to college, and things continued to get worse. I was using substances. I was engaging in extremely risky behavior. I was self-harming intensely. I was in and out of psychiatric hospitals. I had spent 7 months in residential treatment with no real positive effect once I came home. So I had really been through the ringer. I had lost hope. I had dropped out of college twice due to my borderline symptoms. Could not keep a relationship for the life of me. My family relationships were crumbling. My romantic relationships were chaotic. And quite frankly, I just didn't want to live that way anymore. And I was at the end of my rope. After a suicide attempt, and after finally graduating college, I was at my rock bottom. And finally was convinced to try one more doctor. And this is when my life began to change. I reluctantly went to go see this doctor, and the doctor was Dr. Leland Heller in Okeechobee, Florida, of all places. And as soon as I walked into this doctor's office, I knew that something was different, because he had this video playing on his screen, and it was talking about people with borderline and how they self-injure, and when they self-injure, they can injure in parallel lines. And when I heard that, I looked down at my arms and I saw all of these parallel lines on my arms, and I thought, this person is going to help me. So, tearing up a little bit, it was a special day. That doctor ended up being a huge part of my life. He got me into treatment. He got me into dialectical behavior therapy, and I started going to group therapy with a couple of other women 3 times a week, 2 hours a piece. So I was in therapy 6 hours a week. I did that for about a year and a half, and eventually left treatment and was much improved. But I still was not where I wanted to be. I still had a lot of relationship difficulties. I was on a lot of medications at that point, was managing my symptoms much better, but I was still having a lot of strong urges to hurt myself. I was still having difficulty knowing what to do with these intense emotions, and my biggest problem was that I had no idea who I was, what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know who I wanted to be. And so this is when I started to realize that treatment in itself was not enough. I had to make this a lifestyle. I had to make recovery a lifestyle for myself. And so I pulled out the DBT book, the Dialectical Behavior Therapy book that my therapist had worked with me on, and used DBT with me. And I started studying these DBT skills myself. I started studying mindfulness. I started studying the BPD brain. I started studying relationship skills. I started studying emotions, emotional intelligence, emotion regulation skills. And I started getting to work. I started using skills every day. I started practicing new skills that I had not learned before. I started reading every book that I could get my hands on. I was watching videos. I was talking to other people with BPD. And this constant work on myself, this constant push eventually became a lifestyle. I started to see myself using skills automatically when I wanted to self-harm or I wanted to change an emotion. I started to notice myself being able to do that, to being able to take my overwhelming anger and bring it down so that I didn't lash out at someone. And when I saw that starting to happen on a regular basis, I realized that I had finally started to make it. Through all of the years of treatment, all of the self-harm, all of the doctors, the meds, the therapy appointments, it was putting these skills into action in my daily life and taking control over my daily life that really pushed me past the point of just kind of surviving with BPD to thriving with BPD. So that brings me where I am today. So I am a BPD coach. I coach people with borderline personality disorder. I help them find treatment resources, help them stay in treatment, and help them make this a lifestyle because it saved my life, and I think it can save the lives of a lot of other people. Borderline personality disorder is one of the most painful psychiatric illnesses you can have. It can wreak havoc on your life, but I'm here to spread a message that it doesn't have to do that. Borderline is not hopeless. It doesn't mean that you cannot have a life worth living. And I'm here to hopefully spread the message and give you hope that you can have that life too. It's going to take some work though. And so over the next couple months, hopefully next couple of years, I'm going to be making some more videos here on my channel, sharing skills, sharing about some of the BPD symptoms and what you can do to start putting some actions into place to change things in your life. I hope you'll stick around, share with me what your experience is with BPD, and I really look forward to meeting a lot of people. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope that you saw yourself a little bit in it and saw a little bit of hope and light in the darkness at the end. So keep with it. Don't ever give up on recovery. Keep going until you find what works for you, and grab hold of that life worth living. Don't let go until you've got it.